Is this who Israel will trust to sign the covenant with the many from Daniel 9:27? And launch the tribulation? Or is this who they will trust? How about him? How about them? Certainly not him, and certainly not him either. Now we know the land of Israel gets divided because in Joel 3:2, Jesus judges the nations for doing just that. But if Israel doesn't trust anyone on the world stage today, how does this happen? How does it happen this year? If this truly is the year the tribulation starts. This is Bible teacher Nelson Walters. And this teaching was inspired by a question I received at our recent online Q&A on August 31st. We do these from time to time. They're free, and you should consider attending the next one. So let's listen to that question and my short answer first, and then we'll explore this further because I think we all deserve a more complete answer than the one I gave. Oh, this is good. Let's talk about this. So Lisa has a question. She's always on these. She has lots to say, lots of good stuff to say. Let's see what she asks. With the current global anti-Semitic climate, what person or organization do you believe could convincingly offer peace and safety to Israel? So I guess the short answer would be probably none. But because, certainly they don't trust the United States. They certainly don't trust the United Nations. They're not going to trust their Arab neighbors. I don't think any would actually. But you might get to a point where Israel feels, well, this is kind of like the best we can do. Their economy is starting to tank. They are surrounded. I don't know how much they're actually outnumbered, but it's probably 300 to 1. And as other groups begin to acquire nuclear weapons, their military superiority is gone. I think they're going to feel boxed into a corner where they make a deal with death. And that actually is what it says in Isaiah 28. God speaks to, the rulers in Jerusalem, and he says, you have made a covenant with death and with Sheol, which is the grave. So I think the answer, Lisa, is none, but they're going to feel boxed into a corner, and they're going to do it. And of course, that's not going to work out well for them. So you saw my basic feelings that there is no one Israel can really trust. Everyone's initial reaction is, oh, wait a minute, they're going to trust Trump. He moved the American consulate to Jerusalem, didn't he? Well, I think they realize the American presidency is a revolving door, and in 4 years, it has to be someone else. This assumes Trump is elected, and it assumes that he's actually going to be on their side if he's elected. And of course, if it's Harris, I don't think they'll trust her administration at all because it's really just the current administration following in another term. Or maybe it'll be worse. Mohammed bin Salman, I can't imagine they'll trust him. And the UN has done nothing but produce edicts against Israel. The World Court, in fact, has threatened to arrest Netanyahu should he enter certain countries. And these other characters, their neighbors, well, it goes without saying that Israel has zero trust in what they say or do. In a nutshell, Israel trusts no one on the world stage. Now, despite widespread global support, including that of the U.S., for the two-state solution, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has so far refused to agree to the development of a sovereign Palestine. He has pointed out that it could bring unwanted elements into the heart of Israel and place Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, and the Ben Gurion airport under permanent threat of attack. So without a watchdog they can trust to keep the peace, Israel will continue to refuse to agree to two states. So that's the current situation. But Israel might not be given a choice on the matter. They might be forced to do it. As you know, at the end of this month, the United Nations will hope to produce the Pact for the Future, a document or covenant that empowers the UN like never before. Now, I need to give a shout out to Marco Hanikas, who provided me a copy of the entire agreement, at least as it currently stands. Nations had until 5 p.m. on Tuesday, the 3rd of September, to object to any portion. After that, they were expected to attend the summit and have their government sign off on it. So it appears incredibly likely that this will happen, and that the document that I was given by Marco is probably pretty close to the final document. Just to give you a brief overview of what it will entail, they plan to greatly expand the Security Council, the council that really makes the decisions. It's kind of like packing the Supreme Court, but on a worldwide basis, getting people on the Security Council who will vote their way. This is very dangerous stuff. The document also discusses taking away the veto power, or at least greatly modifying the veto power of the Security Council members. Vetoes by the USA have saved Israel many times in the past when everyone else voted a different way. So don't expect that to happen in the future. Not only will they likely have the ability to extradite Netanyahu, they may have that same power over you and me. Plus, they have greatly expanded their peacekeeping function in the largest section of a document called the International Peace and Security. In 1 Thessalonians 5:3, Paul warned believers that while they, unbelievers, are saying there is peace and security, exactly the same words, then sudden destruction will come upon them as labor pains come upon a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. It's amazing that the motto of the UN, peace and security, is the same as these words prophesied by Paul, 2,000 years ago. This section of the pact empowers the UN to actively negotiate to end hostilities by eliminating the cause of the dispute. This, of course, in the world's eyes, is that the Palestinians don't have a homeland. The pact also empowers the peacekeeping forces of the UN to enforce this peace. There are many more sections in this pact involving equity, inclusion, climate change, etc. But let's focus today on the ones we mentioned, because these will likely be the ones used to force Israel to divide their land and complete the covenant. And you may not realize it, but this is exactly what the Bible indicates will happen. In Daniel 9:26 through 27, we read, and I've shortened this a little bit so you can get the flow of seeing who the he is. And the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and sanctuary, and he shall make a strong covenant with the many for 1 week. We've discussed this several times on this channel, but now, with the pact for the future in view, let's look how this might play out. The pact will give teeth to this passage. A prince who is to come, and we're going to call him the Prince of the Covenant, will make, strengthen, or enforce the covenant that's coming. He is the implementer. We really need to keep an eye peeled for who this is. It is not the Antichrist, as so many in the church have thought. Let me say that again. He is not the Antichrist, as so many think. Rather, the Antichrist defeats him, so it can't be Jesus either. Later, in Daniel 11:22, we read about this event. Armies shall be utterly swept away before him. That's before the Antichrist, and broken, even the Prince of the Covenant. So the implementer of the covenant is eventually broken by the Antichrist. We discussed this in this previous video. We'll put a link at the end of this one in case you missed it so you can watch it, because you really should see that and get all the information about this Prince of the Covenant. Now, the covenant will last 7 years. It will last from the time it is ratified until Jesus returns and puts an end to it. So, the land of Israel will be divided for 7 years. That's sort of what it's saying. So, sometime in the first year of the tribulation, the covenant will be put in place. We believe this begins with the pact for the future, and that it will be used as an implement to divide the land of Israel. It will be used to force the division of Israel. That seems to be what the verb in the verse that we just read in Daniel said. It's mistranslated in most Bibles as make a strong or confirm a covenant. The Hebrew word is gabar, which means strong, mighty, or even prevail. The verb is in something that the Hebrew calls the hefel form, which means the subject, Prince of the Covenant, causes this to happen. So the Prince of the Covenant causes the covenant to prevail or be victorious. He causes it to be strong or enforced. Either idea shows that the covenant is forced on the many by an outside force. In Joel 3:2, Jesus judges the nations for dividing his land. This implies it was their fault. I will gather all the nations and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat. There I will enter into judgment against them concerning my people, my inheritance, Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations, and they have divided up my land. Will the UN use their newfound powers to do this? I think so, but the bottom line of Joel is it's the nations who divided the land. Israel wasn't really responsible. In the passage I spoke of, in the Q&A, it appears the leadership of Jerusalem, however, is to blame as well. Isaiah 28:14-15. Therefore hear the word of the Lord, O scoffers who rule this people in Jerusalem. For you said, we have made a covenant with death, and we have fashioned an agreement with Sheol. When the overwhelming scourge passes through, it will not touch us, because we have made lies our refuge, and falsehood our hiding place. Now, will the pact for the future be used to put pressure on the leaders of Jerusalem as well? We know from numerous statements that they've made they don't want to sign a dividing agreement right now. However, from this passage, we see the covenant seems to grant the leaders in Jerusalem some measure of comfort, that perhaps a UN peacekeeping force will provide them with protection. Of course, the passage in Isaiah shows this is a lie and a falsehood. So how is pressure applied to the leaders in Jerusalem? Well, the UN already has a world court warrant out for the arrest of Netanyahu, and may put out similar ones for other Israeli leaders. Once this pact makes this enforceable, it could be a big motivator to get the Israeli leaders to the negotiating table. You know, if the UN says, hey, we're going to come in, seize you guys, throw you into prison, or you could negotiate, they might want to negotiate. This is similar to the lawfare being used in many other countries, including the USA. And just this week, the USA issued a warrant for this guy from the group that we like to call the Hammies. So lawfare may be used on both sides, since the Hammies are resistant to signing an agreement to divide the land as well. They want all the land. And Satan wants this agreement signed. He wants possession of the land, and especially the Temple Mount. The 70th week is all about possession of Israel, Jerusalem, and the Temple Mount. This should bring Psalm 2:4-6 to mind. And he who sits in the heavens, that's God, laughs. The Lord holds them, the globalists, in derision. He will speak to them in his wrath and terrify them with his fury, saying, as for me, I have set my king on Zion, my holy hill. And that, of course, is Jesus. God is saying Jesus is going to return, sit on the Temple Mount as king, and rule over the nation of Israel. Jesus is going to get his inheritance, no matter what the nations try to do. But in the current situation, you can see how trust has really nothing to do with the covenant with the many that's coming. Israel doesn't sign out of trust. You can also see the issue of the dividing of the land of Israel will likely be directly linked to the pact for the future. It will be an issue of force and law that imposes the dividing of Israel. Is the pact for the future the covenant then? Or is the peace deal that divides Israel the covenant? Or is it both? We know very little about the covenant from Scripture. I have given you just about all of the relevant passages. But we know some things. We know the covenant is a secular agreement. In the Hebrew Scriptures, references to the Holy Covenant are usually referred to as the covenant, habarit in the Hebrew, just as it is earlier in Daniel 9 and Daniel 9:4. But secular agreements are usually referred to as just barit, as a covenant. And that is how Daniel 9:27 and Daniel 9:22 refer to it, as a secular covenant. Plus, there are numerous places in Jeremiah and the other prophets that warn of a false peace. The dividing of the land of Israel will certainly be such a false peace. They're going to promise them something in order for the dividing to take place. Plus, the covenant with death and Sheol from Isaiah 28:14 through 15 also refers to a false peace covenant that Israel's leaders enter into and depend upon. So the answer appears to be that a false peace covenant and probably the dividing of Israel are linked to this covenant with the many. So my best guess at this point is that the pact for the future is the vehicle that permits the false peace. It will certainly be interesting to see if Israel signs the pact, because once they do that, the dominoes start to fall in terms of the false peace. The pact will make it pretty much unavoidable from what I can figure out. So to me, both are the covenant. And isn't that just like Scripture, that nothing is as easy or clear-cut as we would like it? And as we mentioned earlier, the Scriptures are clear that a prince of the covenant is behind the scenes causing the enforcement or prevailing of the covenant. This is really something we all need to be watching for very closely. So click right here to keep watching, because we all need to know as much about this as possible to discover more clues about who this might be and his ultimate demise. Till then, this is Nelson, and I'll see you there.